Welcome to the Tech Talk. I'm Irshad Sefi, a CXO and a Stanford Lead alumni. Today we have a special guest, Akash Saksena. He is a lead information security in Capgemini and has a amazing experience of cybersecurity, ISMS, and whatnot. Today, we have a very interesting topic that we would discuss with Akash. This is revolving around artificial intelligence, generative AI, and the cybersecurity implications. Let's start the conversation. So, firstly, thanks, Akash. Thanks for joining this session. Um, could you please just walk us through with your quick background?
Yeah. Thanks, Irshad. Thanks for having me on this podcast. And yes, thanks and hello to everyone who's listening. And yes, about me. So I have 18 years of experience in IT. I've worked in different domains of IT, whether it's IT delivery, IT service management, and currently in the field of cybersecurity. So as Irshad, you mentioned, I'm working with Capgemini and I lead a practice for OT and IoT cybersecurity over here. So we are at the moment looking into the uh, different sectors of the industry where we mostly have the manufacturing of the devices, whether it's in healthcare, automotive, or critical infrastructure. And I see the day-to-day projects. I have multiple projects that I'm running in different domains, and we ensure that these devices are uh, released securely in the market. Of course, the primary premise is always safety, because that's the ultimate goal for these manufacturers. But then security plays an important role, and it also complements the delivery of the device. So it's a very interesting area. It's a very emerging area of cybersecurity, sort of niche as well. And yeah, so that's what I do, and it keeps me uh, motivated every day.
Thanks. Thank you, Akash. So, Akash, as we have been hearing, particularly in the last 3 years, the evolution of artificial intelligence and now the generative AI, um,
Right,
we are seeing a lot of use case. We are seeing generative AI is actually become the mainstream, something which was
right,
there in the theory, maybe if you go back in 90s or maybe 1970s, it was all theory.
right,
But
right,
thanks to the computational power, thanks to all the um, cloud and uh, quantum compute, so the AI is now actually in the hand of consumers.
right.
I just wanted to understand your view on the artificial intelligence and generative AI, and what are the use cases that you think which are very prevalent in the area that you are working in your current role. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. So as you rightly put it across, artificial intelligence and now generative AI, right? So they have been very, they've been very groundbreaking or breakthrough innovations that have come across in the recent years. From security standpoint, especially now, I'm involved in the manufacturing, field where the cybersecurity is applicable. Uh, of course, use cases are there, but what we are really seeing is on the medical device manufacturing, where AI is currently helping with, let's say, the safety aspects of these devices, because yes, these specifications have to be very very contextual, that it has to match the specified parameters what is required for the diagnosis. Also helping with the patient diagnosis, going deep into the cellular level, where it's helping the physicians diagnose or do the right diagnosis. Earlier there was cases that there are chances that 20% of your diagnosis can be can go wrong, and which were leading to a lot of fatalities. And similarly, on AI side, AI is actually complementing the security field now. So we have to look it as more of a friend rather than a foe, where we should not really be thinking that it's going to eat up the job, which is probably the concern that's running in the industry. So I heard it from a friend of mine that you will not lose your job with AI, but you will lose your job to people with skills with AI, right? So that's something that we will have to uh, constantly upskill. So some of the use cases where I see artificial intelligence, making or supporting us is mostly on, let's say, the risk assessments. You can use your large language models. You can run a predictive algorithms where it can identify some potential risk in your environment. You also have managed detect and response services, or your threat intelligence tools, where it can correlate a large set of data. Again, I'm really talking from
Yeah.
the industrial standpoint, because you have vast amount of data coming from these industrial devices. You have so many sensors in every connection that you have on the field, or on the plant, or the factory floor. And similarly for medical devices, it's completely based on now sensors. It's so these sensors are collecting a vast amount of data. These sensors are collecting a vast amount of vital patient information, or health information, or let's say it's your automotive, it's a smart car, it's a connected car. So all information is being processed, and these information, if used in the rightful manner, uh, can definitely lead to a very fruitful collaboration of utilizing AI, and of course, let's say, mitigating potential adversaries. Of course, I also foresee where generative AI, or at least AI, can also start helping, let's say, with threat modeling. Of course, it will need some human intervention, but it will definitely uh, save time. To in the time that we consume basically to perform this activity.
Thanks, Akash. And I see you have mentioned about sensors, and these are not essentially the use
Mhm.
cases in the medical industry, or the
Mhm.
rather, if we look at the manufacturing industry, there
Right.
also we have a lot of sensors in the
Right.
manufacturing facility. Similarly, in the healthcare, you have already articulated very
Right.
well. So,
Right.
and we are also seeing a lot of use cases being pushed down to the respective
Mhm.
industry. So, if you
Right.
were just to do a little deep dive onto these sensors, when
Mhm.
when some of these industries are trying to use generative AI, what
Right.
security implications are they imposing to a leader like you? And what are the key
Mhm.
threats that you are seeing are being evolved because of generative AI? And
Mhm.
if you could please uh, share a few threats, and what are the strategies that a lead like yourself is working on to address or combat to these threats? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So the threats, again, with every technology, it's of course we see it as an enabler to help us, deliver, or let's say meet a, let's say, customer expectation. But at the same time, there are actors, adversaries, who are always a step ahead, right? So it's always a catch-up game. So
Yeah,
with every new technology, there are vast set of threats which are also there. Some of the threats, we have to understand the taxonomy. What kind of threat landscape basically exists in the AI or the generative AI environment. So you have nefarious events. You have, let's say, somebody getting access to your system, your malicious code. Then you also have to look into, let's say, failure or malfunction. Somebody can poison the data around it. You also have to look at unintentional damage, right? So this is where your human elements also come into picture. Now, with if in one of the recent talks I was mentioning about the generative adversarial network, which is GAN, which
yeah,
basically leads to deep fakes, right? So that's a very dangerous scenario. Now when you talk about the manufacturing side, the adversarial side, now you talk about, let's say, somebody manipulating the data on the sensor side, right? You have sensors which will be basically collecting your temperature details, your, let's say, an equipment. It has to perform at a particular peak. It should have basically have a peak performance or an optimal level of performance. But then, let's say, a site engineer is trying to operate that device, right? And somehow, when you manipulate the information on that device due to the incorrect readings, it can lead to a safety incident. Also, it can be a fatal incident where it can lead to a fatality, a loss of human life. And that's not something which any company or any industry would actually like to see, right? And same, there have been instances in the automotive sectors as well, right? We all have these connected vehicles, right? It's processing a lot amount of data. But then
yeah.
some of the what happens is, let's say, there is an accident, right? Let's say there's no loss of human life, that's fine. But what happens is, let's say somebody wants to diagnose that data from the car, right? Now, what if the attacker or the adversary who has, let's say, tried to, instigate that kind of attack, and they have manipulated the data, right? So these are some of the risks that you will see, right, happening with the information that has been processed. And then you have a lot of your training data. You have a lot of these training data which you would want to have, and let's say want your machine learning algorithms to help you process the data. Now somebody inserts a malicious code, right? So that's a phenomenon which is called as data poisoning, right? And your intended outcome is different from what you actually expected, right? So that's another thing. So you also have reverse engineering of the training model. So these are some of the threats that I see. uh, uh, of course, the list is big. If you want to really go deep down, then I think there are hundreds of threats that you can basically see in a machine learning or an artificial intelligence system that can pose. On the safeguard side, more or less, your security practices remain same from what you've been conventionally doing it. It is just that you have to evolve these practices now with respect to the artificial intelligence world. So you again, the latest trend is security by design, right? So you have to ensure that you are doing a proper assessment as soon as you want to initiate your generative AI or your AI initiatives within the organization. So you have to do a threat model. You have to understand what kind of threats are pervasive over there. Then you have secure coding practice. Again, any leading standards in the industry would be applicable. They are themselves coming with their uh, coding practices for large language models. And then you have your transparency, you have explainability, your robustness. These are all some of the practices that you would have to ensure. And again, defense in depth, your network, you have to segment your network from where you're hosting your data. Let's say a lot of these leading providers are providing data on for, or let's say they're providing your large language models. In fact, you have to have that sort of an agreement with them that whatever training data you're giving providing to them have to be secure. It's just again uh, what these leading providers have, right? So you have security, or let's say what do you the right term would be a collaborative security approach has to be taken over here.
Thanks, Akash. This was really insightful. Um, I because you mentioned and that you have about 18 years of cybersecurity experience, and
Right.
this is something that really passionates you to drive more into cybersecurity and now artificial intelligence. And you're also working on some of these niche areas of the use
Right.
cases and securing them. Um,
Right.
and there's a lot of buzz around the Gen AI as we speak, be
Right.
it for the IT professionals or non-IT professionals. Would
Right.
you share a few suggestions that can be applied to anyone, starting from students to the working professionals? That what are those two, three things that people should be doing to cut the noise and really make the use case of the generative AI so that it is advantages for them on whatever they are doing, and eventually they become successful?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said earlier, right? So generative AI is going to be an ally rather than looking at it as an enemy. Uh, and yes, you need to have skills with generative AI. Otherwise, somebody with skills with generative AI is going to take over your current role. So my message to the youth or the aspiring or let's say working professionals who are looking to upskill, artificial intelligence skill is has to be complemented in your current professional. It has to be a part of your growth journey if you are looking for the next let's say a decade of let's say the technology advancements that we have. And generative AI gives presents a lot of opportunity, right? So it presents a lot of opportunity for people who want to, let's say some of the IT examples can be around analysis of logs, right? Helping you with a secure coding mechanism, right? In cybersecurity, as I said, you have threat intelligence, threat detection, response. It can also help you contextualize a lot of information on the latest trends which can be leveraged by the organizations, right? Help you automate a lot of your activities. So again, automation is not something which again it should not be looked at as a reduction of workforce. It should actually be looked at as an optimization of your activity. So these are the areas where the people or the youth or anyone aspiring to join the field of cybersecurity IT should look it at.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think there couldn't be anything else that you have mentioned. Appreciate it, Akash. Well, this brings us to the conclusion of this call. And before we conclude, I really wanted to thank you, Akash, for spending your time and sharing all the valuable inputs and insights pertaining to the cybersecurity, its use case for artificial intelligence and Gen AI, the potential security risks that it may have, and how we can combat to those risks. And towards the end, a great suggestion to the youth and the working professionals. So thank you so much, Akash, for being here. And it's been a real pleasure to have you on this call. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ashad. It's an honor, and I'm happy I'm able to contribute to the society.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.